Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our fourth and sadly final Watford History Talk. I'm Peter, the Mayor of Watford, and as ever, I'm joined by Sarah Priestley, who is the curator at Watford Museum. Have you had a good week, Sarah?
I have, yes, thank you.
And this week, we have a very special guest who's going to talk to us about buildings in Watford. A man who's published many books and been described as one of the most boring men in Britain, Paul Rabbits, who is the head of Watford's Parks. Parks, Heritage and Culture, Paul, is that right?
Yeah, cool. I don't know why I was given culture, because I haven't got a cultural bone in my body.
Well, we're delighted to have you on. Both you and your shirt are most welcome. And I think that technically you're Sarah's boss, aren't you?
Yes, I need to delegate more to her. She's very difficult to manage because she gives me back chat all the time.
Quite right.
I'm the nice one. Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you on.
Museum.
And Paul's going to talk to us about a number of buildings in the town. And as ever, we really welcome anyone's questions or comments. So do comment below and we'll pick up some of those questions and answer those later on. But for now, Paul, I'm going to hand over to you so that you can talk us through some of Watford's buildings.
Brilliant. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Sarah. And I do have some slides to show, which I think Lewis is going to take us through them. Oh, here we are. Oh, this is looking good. This is looking good. It's a brief selection. Yeah, it's I haven't got very long. I have no time to go through all 50 buildings. I've been here for quite a long time. So I've chosen a brief selection. But what it is, it relates to a book that myself and Councillor Peter Jeffrey did, being a photographer and a very, very good photographer, both deciding that we wanted to do a book on Watford in 50 building. It's part of a series that the publisher Amberley Publishing do, and obviously it just felt the right time to do one on Watford. It was interesting why I did it. One of the reasons why I did it is obviously I work here. I've been here 10 years. I wanted to know more about Watford, but also when I first moved here 10 years ago, I moved down to work for Watford Council. Somebody turned around and says to me, "Oh, what are you going to Watford for?" I says, "Well, why not? Have you not been?" I've never been. Well, isn't it a bit like Luton? And so I thought, how very dare they? So I know what the rivalry is between the two towns. So all the more reason to do a book celebrating what I think are some of Watford's finest buildings, and we have some incredibly interesting architectural buildings in the town, which I think we often overlook. So I'm doing a brief selection. So if Lewis, you want to take me on to the next one? Here we are, and it really is a brief selection. Like I said, there are 50, so this was number 5 in the book. And I've chosen ones for this particular 20-minute chat that perhaps a little bit less obvious. So you won't find St Mary's Church in there, for instance, because it's an obvious one. It's in the book. But I thought I'd choose one or two that were just a little bit more unusual, that we walk past on a daily basis, that you've never really stopped and looked at. And I always say, as far as looking at buildings, which I'm always doing, I just to love parks, obviously, and bandstands, but buildings as well, is you look up. And I know Sarah and I, when we've walked up here, I think there's various features on this building, which I think you've taken pictures of. They're a little bit more unusual, but rather than looking at all the garish, Age UK and Zincos and all that kind of fascia stuff, if you actually look up at the building, you're missing some of the most finest architectural features that we have in Watford. I do like this building. Monmouth House, again, you'll have walked past it many times, but the home, apparently, of Sir Robert Carey, who in 1603 took the news of Queen Elizabeth's death to James I. And he was created Earl of Monmouth. Now, I don't know whether it was because of that he was created Earl of Monmouth, but one of the things about many of our buildings in Watford is that they're often reputed to have bits of Casiobury House demolished in 1927. And again, allegedly parts of this building were rebuilt with bits of Casiobury House. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. But anyway, moving on, next one. Number 6, there are obviously a number associated with Casiobury. And the Dower Houses, and one of the most important buildings that we have in Watford. And when I've done this talk, elsewhere, and I've done the Casiobury talk. The amount of people who live in Watford who do not know the existence of Little Casiobury, one of the old dower houses from the Casiobury estate, again, where the Earls of Essex used to live. We don't know the exact date. It's possibly late 17th century, but style-wise, in Queen Anne style, rather beautiful, as you can see here. 1939, acquired by Herts County Council, who still own it. Moving on, Lewis. And here it is today. And like I said, many people say, oh, where on earth's that? Well, it's a grade 2-star listed building. It's one of 4 that we have in Watford. And this is it. It's sat behind the registry office, just behind West Herts College and between Lanchester House. In there it sits quietly tucked away, looking for a use, looking for a purpose. But again, one of our finest buildings and a great link back to the great Casiobury estate, which we all know so well. Next one. Ah, yes, this one. I mean, this is a pretty obvious one, but I had to include it because when I'm often asked, what's my favourite building in Watford? And I always say this one, Mrs. Elizabeth Fuller's Free School, dating back to 1704. Tucked in behind where St Mary's Church is. I'm sure you all know it very, very well. Mrs. Fuller, 3 times a widow, devoted her life to charity and visited here daily to hear boys and girls read the scriptures. Well, it was obviously quite a tough place to be taught. Children were not allowed to be absent, nor behave themselves irreverently, nor given to incivility towards their betters, disobedience, or the like, which I think is quite sounds as if it was quite strict. And then the other thing, Sundays. I mean, day off on a Sunday? No. Catechizing the children, the church catechism. So it doesn't sound like life was very, very exciting there. But as a building, it's certainly, I think, one of our finest buildings. Next one. Number 8. Number 8, I had to include this one. Frogmore House, again, one of our grade 2-star listed buildings. And it's gone through a number of ownerships, built in 1716 for Isaac Finch the Elder. I wonder who Isaac Finch the Younger was. But he was a wealthy local merchant specialising in leather. Eventually sold to the Watford Gas and Coke Company with adjoining gasworks. So you can imagine living there and all of a sudden in the bottom of the garden, the gasworks appears. But again, one of our, I would say one of our most loved buildings. Next one, Lewis. And recently restored, beautifully restored. And a lot of work that was put in here by the Temple Trust, the council, and a local developer who saw an opportunity here. And I think they're now offices, are they not, Sarah?
Yes, they are. Yeah. So they were flats before they became derelict. However, they wouldn't be safe now for home occupation due to sort of fire regulations and things like that. So, but they are absolutely stunningly restored, and you can see on your lovely picture that there is actually a disabled ramp, so that there is full accessibility to the ground floor, which is something that was never there before. So great success for the town.
I mean, a real good example of partnership working actually between a local authority, a local developer, a trust, and how this could be done, because it wasn't in council's ownership, but the work just by using the intricacies of the planning system saw that this building was fully restored, and it really is. I think it's a fine restoration, and as a parky, I think the gardens just look wonderful. Next one. Our number 11, we're still on Casiobury. Yeah, I mean, people, we mourn the loss of the Casiobury house. Well, actually, there are many remnants left of the great Casiobury estate, in particular, a number of lodges. I think this is one of the most bizarre buildings that we have in Watford. Known here as Casiobury Lodge, but also known as the Swiss Cottage Lodge. But it's actually not the Swiss Cottage, which is often it's been known as. Well, it's not. It is the Casiobury Lodge. Described by Britton, very famous architectural commentator at the time, in 1837, as the most elaborate in execution, its whole exterior being covered or cased with pieces of sticks of various sizes split in two. I just think it's a remarkable building that just kind of sits there, and you drive past it and think, wow, where did that one come from? It's a building I would love to see inside, to be honest, and maybe I'll get the opportunity one day. Next one, Lewis. And again, there are several lodges actually on Hempstead Road. I think it's about 3 in total, all former entrances to the Great Casiobury estate. This one, which I think is about halfway down Hempstead Road, is called Home Farm Lodge, and was actually the main entrance to Home Farm, which was a very large kind of agricultural working farm right in the middle of the Casiobury estate, roughly where West Hart's golf course is today. And when you look at this building, it's kind of got that nice Tudor style to it, but that could almost be in the middle of the Cotswolds or somewhere like that, or down in Dorset or anywhere like that. It's absolutely gorgeous. But there it is, tucked away on Hempstead Road. Next one. And again, all these rumours of bits of Casiobury House on buildings. I think these 2 chimneys is when I used to sit in traffic going to work on Hempstead Road, and I would kind of sit there staring, waiting to get to work. And I'd look across and think, oh, that's an interesting building. And then you'd look up and look at the chimneys and think, they're rather unusual, but they don't suit the house. So again, are these parts of the old Casiobury House? Possibly, possibly not. But it's certainly nice. It's quite nice to ponder that. Next one. Again, still on Casiobury, tucked away on the Casiobury estate. Again, a remnant of the Great Casiobury House and the huge estate that we had there. And this is, again, probably the only real bit that's left of the old house, even though it was detached from the house, but all kind of connected, was the Old Stables, built in 1805 to 1815, probably designed by Wyatt, who obviously remodeled Casiobury House into the Gothic style that we all recognise it from Turner's paintings. Eventually became a riding school, then an old people's home, and now, well, it was a rehabilitation centre, and I'm assuming that's what it's still used for. But again, it's just tucked away on Richmond Drive on the Casiobury estate, another fine remnant of Casiobury. Next one, Lewis. I put this one in, and Peter, who I mean, his photographs are just brilliant. He took all the pictures bar one, which I think I've included, but this one was included on the list. I'm thinking, I hadn't heard of Kite's place. I didn't know of its existence. Don't know a huge amount about it. It's tucked away on the Meriden estate, early 19th century, but used by the army in World War II, and bought by a trust after the war by the Order of St. John and the British Red Cross Society. And the parkland has since been sold off. So when I went and explored it and drove around, I thought, wow, this is rather interesting. And you've got all those rather fine bungalows that surround it, which were built for the elderly, but also for people who had significant disabilities. But I think it's rather a fine house. I don't know whether you know much more about it, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lovely sort of 19th century house, and actually there's quite a few of these dotted around in Watford. This isn't that far from Munden House as well, which is another beautiful one that people just don't really know they're there. They're sort of hidden away, sort of like moving further out. Garston Manor. We've also got the Building Research Establishment. They've got Bucknall's house there. So these were really beautiful, well-to-do houses of the local gentry. And, quite a lot of them have survived and taken on really interesting uses. So, yeah, it's an absolutely beautiful photo.
It is, and I think it's interesting because recently I've been doing some my day job is obviously partly managing parks, is doing management plans for Garston Park and Lee Farm recreation ground. And interesting looking at some of the old maps of the area at the time, and obviously you had Kite's place, you had Lee Farm, you had Garston Farm, and then obviously further out you had Garston Manor. So it's interesting looking at all these different estates that have gradually been enveloped by the town as Watford has grown over the years, and these kind of remnants of these buildings, but also these wonderful trees that you find dotted around as well. Next slide. Church of All Saints. Now, again, when you're doing a book in 50 buildings, they can often be dominated by churches because there's so many of them, and most of them are absolutely fantastic. This is one of my favourite. It is the Church of All Saints on Horseshoe Lane. And again, when we're doing a little bit of work there recently, repairing the wall on the perimeter of that church, and the churchyard itself was looking a little bit untidy. We've done some work in there now. When you actually look at the church, it is a remarkably fine building. But when you actually look at it, who designed these buildings and the architects that were involved? Sir George Gilbert Scott designed this in 1835 in the Gothic style. Now, if we move on to the next slide, Lewis, George Gilbert Scott, there he is, was one of our most, if not, along with Alfred Waterhouse, one of our most famous Victorian architects. And he restored 18 of the 26 cathedrals that we have and designed over 800 buildings in England alone. And some of these buildings were absolutely remarkable, very, very famous. Next one, Lewis. This one, St Pancras. I think this is probably his finest building, and you walk past it and I just can't help looking up at it in absolute awe. Is just one of the finest Victorian buildings in London. Also responsible for designing the Foreign and Commonwealth Office as well. So, when you look at, the fact that we have Sir George Gilbert Scott Church in Watford, it's something to behold, to be honest. Very remarkable. Next one. Tucked away out on Ladies Close, number 16 in the book, is the Sikh Community Centre. Well, looking at it now, you wouldn't think it was a Sikh Community Centre. Well, actually, the most famous thing about this building, it was our very first purpose-built courthouse, dating from 1858. And you can see the kind of, I think it's a lion and a unicorn there on the top there next to the crest. It's just beautiful. I think the idea of where they used to meet, judges and magistrates previously meeting in the local Essex Arms, it'd be interesting to see how many beers that they had before they sent people down. But again, a wonderful after use for a building that kind of lost its use. And there's now a community centre, just wonderful. Next one. Number 17 in the book, Salter's Company Almshouses. And again, when I've done this I've done several books on in 50 buildings, including Luton. I'm currently doing Hertford at the moment with Peter, and one or two others as well. You often find that in nearly every town or city, the number of almshouses that we have. And again, Watford is not unusual. We have the Bedford Almshouses, but also tucked away in Nascot, we have the Salter's Company Almshouses, a livery company based in the city of London, built to house pensioners who were moved from the company's cramped city almshouses, dating from 1863. Next slide, Lewis. And here they are. I think this was taken in the hot summer that we had a couple of years ago, because the grass is looking a little bit brown. And I think Peter did go back and take another one where the grass was a little bit greener. But I do like it. I think as a building, it's magnificent. Again, built in the Gothic style. 12 females and 8 males, a bit of an imbalance there, but there you go. And almshouses to this day. Beautiful, beautiful building, but just tucked away off the beaten track. Next one, Lewis. And the London Orphan Asylum. I think this is one of, again, I mean, we see this coming in on the train, don't we? It is the old London Orphan Asylum, designed by Henry Dawson in 1871. And it was an asylum built for 500 to 600 orphans and 100 servants, which is remarkable. Moved from London to the fresh air of Watford and away from typhus, which was gripping the capital at that time. So fresh air all the way out to Watford. Next one, Lewis. And here we are. It's a remarkable building. Beautifully, beautifully designed. It's named after the organisation, named after Dr. Andrew Reed. And the whole idea of the organisation was to maintain, clothe and educate respectable children of either sex whose fathers had lost their lives in the Army, Navy and Maritime Services. So quite sad. Renamed in 1915 as the London Orphan School, Reed's in 1939. I think we all know it now as the Reed's Estate. Used as a hospital in 1940 and offices after that. And then in 1989, again showing that old buildings can be restored and reused and developed in a really sympathetic manner. And I think none more so than what we've got here at the Old Orphan Asylum. Gorgeous building. Next one. Another church. Like I say, I could have chosen many. What I like about this one is this rather nice conical turret on the Baptist Tabernacle on Derby Road. And again, local architect William Henry Syme, I think you call him, built many churches actually, or many buildings in Watford, including St Matthew's Church in Oxley, which almost made the 50, but not quite. And again, wonderful detailing. But that turret is just magnificent. Next one. Again, more unusual buildings. Again, you may have walked past these on many occasions. And police stations in particular, when you look at towns as they grow, they often grow out of their size because the town is growing bigger and then they bigger, better premises. Exactly the same happened with police stations, and this was our first one on King Street. And before we had a proper police force, we had people that were kind of like, I won't say voted in, but kind of like volunteered in a way. And their role was suppression of drunkenness, popish recusants, and to deal with rogues. Now, I can't read the bottom of that slide because it's clipped it, but you can see the kind of thing that they had to do. And again, another remarkable restoration of a building that, you know, again, has found a really good after use. Police station. Next one, Lewis, which I think is also a former police station, when the police actually used to do weights and measures. Basically, if you were seen weighing things wrong and measuring things wrong and trying to con people, you got into serious trouble. And Henry Smith House here on Escourt Road used to be a police station just for checking weights and measures. And then the police eventually stopped doing that, and it became the Office of the Inspector of Weights and Measures, Food and Drugs, Petroleum, Explosives, Fertilizers, and Feeding Stuff. I don't think we have one of those now, do we, Peter?
No, we don't, Paul. You're keeping me on my toes.
Can we have one?
Of course.
I think that's a great post. You can add it to my job.
Old-fashioned environmental services department, though, isn't it? Who do all the licensing?
Yeah.
We do actually have some weights and measures in the museum, though. If you ever want to open a new one.
Want to open a new one, yeah. I think it's a lovely building. I think it's run by, I think it's a youth organisation that's in there now. But again, just tucked out of the way. We have all these remarkable buildings that are just off the beaten track that we just really don't know a huge amount about. Next one. Hospitals, obviously. Again, mentioned towns growing incredibly quickly. And hospitals, none more so than our very first hospital, which was the former cottage hospital, which I think is on Vicarage Road. Opened by Lady Clarendon in 1886, paid for by public subscription. And again, you know, one of these, you know, these many older buildings paid for by people subscribing to it. Real proper philanthropy. Wonderfully, if only we had that kind of subscription today, it would certainly help out. Gorgeous building. Again, now offices. Next one. Cinemas. Again, we've had many cinemas throughout the town, and this one, I just think, again, when I first came to Watford, and I was walking up and down the parade, and then I eventually looked down King Street and thought, whoa, what is that? The former cinema, the Isolde cinema, and it's been various cinemas called various ones. I think the Central at one stage or other. It eventually became a bingo hall, and then again, wonderfully restored in this Art Deco style, which I think is the only Art Deco building we've got in Watford, Sarah.
Not quite, but of this very sort of, you know, beautiful kind of Miami style, yes. You know, with the waves, it's absolutely stunning, and you can imagine they were picture palaces. You'd walk in and be transported. But the town hall was actually an Art Deco building, but just a very different, less you know, ostentatious version.
Yeah, wonderful. I recently did a book in Bournemouth in 50 buildings, and with a very good friend of mine, and went down there, and the number of fabulous Art Deco buildings in Bournemouth is just stupendous. Hotels, cinemas, you name it, houses, shops, just wonderful stuff. I do like it as an architectural style. Next one. The Moon Underwater. Restored in 1916. Now, again, as a pub, I don't think I've ever been into it. But the most famous thing about this building, this is almost where we ended up with the Metropolitan Station and the terminus. The land was acquired and was actually stopped by the Borough Council at the time. So we could have had the Met Station almost, well, right into the heart of Watford Town Centre. It was turned down because of the adverse impact on Casiobury Park. It would basically halved Cassidy Park into two bits, which really wouldn't have gone down very well at the time. So the Borough Council turned it down. I suspect, and Sarah might correct me if I'm wrong, that at the time on the Borough Council, the Earl of Essex was probably on the council and didn't want it to go across the land. But whether that's true or not, I don't know. But again, thankfully, it didn't come into the heart of our town, and we ended up with this rather fine public house there. Next one. Oh, now when I first saw this, when I first moved to Watford, and I thought worked to Watford, I thought this could be anywhere, like Chester or really wonderful Tudor towns. It's almost out of character in Watford, but as buildings, they're not actually that old, dating from 1920. And described as Tudor Beetham, which I think is a great word. Say that after a few gins. But it is on the site of the former Compasses Public House, one of our very, much older buildings that we had in Watford. And if you walk past it, if you move to the next slide, Lewis, you have this tucked away just on the side of the building. And when Peter took it, I said to him, I said, "Oh, did you get the old window?" He goes, "Oh, what old window?" I said, "There's an old window just down the side of it, which dates back to the 15th century. And it's an old window from the old former rest house that used to be on that particular site." And again, I'm sure many people walk past it, but don't even know it's there. Again, a really fine little lost gem, hidden gem. Next one. The Met Station. Obviously, the Met Line is the world's first underground line, which I didn't know, and designed in this wonderful style. They call it domestic revival style, or what I prefer, homely vernacular. And Charles Walter Clark, who was the architect for many of these, actually built 25 stations, very similar in style, on the Met Line. I think this is being classed as one of the finest examples that we've got on the Met Line. It's a remarkable building. Next one. Industry. You have to include industrial buildings. Again, Watford growing at an incredible rate with printing and all the various different kinds of industry. Rembrandt House on Whippendale Road. Again, a fine building that's been restored into residential use, but it was industrial. It was originally a watch factory and then eventually became, lots of other uses. The Rembrandt Photogravure Limited Works, now residential. So again, it was linked to the great printing industry that we used to have in Watford. Moving on. I had to include Cheslin. It's, my team and Violet beautifully managed this, one of our finest open spaces in Watford. And again, designed by Henry Colbeck, who was a local architect. He worked in London and in Watford, but he lived here lived here in 1949 with his wife Daisy. Daisy mainly being responsible for the laying out of the gardens. It was handed to us in '65, and we allowed Henry to live there until 1971, and then we took it over fully, and it's now one of our most popular public spaces. Beautiful, beautiful building. Again, tucked away in Nascot. Next one. Sarah. This is your favourite building, isn't it?
It is. It's an amazing building.
Do you want to describe this one?
Okay, well, very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, but it's actually a brutalist building. You'll find quite a few brutalist concrete buildings in Watford, and this doesn't look like that. It's made of brick. But actually, that's because it was made designed by a couple of architects called the Smithsons, and it's a very rare example of a brutalist family home. So there's actually little concrete details inside, but the whole house was designed in a really unusual style, but doesn't look that strange or weird or severe, but it's just very warm and friendly and architecturally one of the most important buildings in the area, and people come from all over Europe to see it.
They do. It's wonderful. Next one, I think we're almost done. 46, I think there's a couple more to go. Now, this is a strange choice, the Meriden. There's Peter's lovely scimitar in the foreground there. Again, a strange choice. Well, actually, these dominate the Watford skyline, and we included them because they have history. They're landmarks. They dominate the skyline. But actually, when you look back, the early plans were there was to be 4 of these at 12 stories, but we eventually only got 2. But it's 17 stories after lots of debate, and there was a lot of debate around this. So only the 2, but much taller than was originally planned. Next one. Oh, the Into. Now, modern architecture, if you like modern architecture, which I don't mind it, the Into Centre and the Charter Place has changed considerably. Most of these units are occupied now, but again, just goes to show, I think, you know, the kind of progressive modern architecture that we have in the town. Again, you know, on a very old historic high street, but again, I think this fits in really well. I like it. I mean, I'm sure those who don't like it, but I actually like it. I think it's very impressive. And I think the next one, Lewis, might be the last one. Oh, it's not. This is a picture that I took. The Seventh-day Adventist Church. How do I get rid of that? Dismiss. Sorry, something on my screen there. Seventh-day Adventist Church, the headquarters in Watford, up there near Stanborough Park. I just think there's a really unusual building. Opened in 2011, so it's very modern, but just remarkably odd. And again, I drove past it thinking, never seen that one before. That's got to go in the book. And the last one. Last two. Back into Casiobury Park, and I've included the Char. Because it's again another Art Deco building, and on to the next one, Lewis. The Hub, which again, built in 2017 as part of a huge lottery project restoring Casiobury Park, and the whole idea that this building sits in the landscape, not on it but in it. So single-story building on this side, and the next one, Lewis. A busy day. Oh, we'd love to be doing this again shortly, wouldn't we? A busy day back in Casiobury Park, a double-story building, and again, the centre of the parks team now that manage Casiobury Park. And I think there's one more slide to go, Lewis, which is a shameless plug. Watford in 50 are all good bookstores in Watford, are available at Watford Museum and online, and it includes all 50 buildings, many that you're thinking probably should have been in this slide, but I tried to choose ones that were less obvious. There you go.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Paul. And we had loads of people watching and lots of questions as we were going along. So I'm going to start with some of those straight away. Stephen Danzig asked about Little Casiobury House. And as you both know, there's ongoing work to restore that. And he was just asking, what is the latest situation? Who's able to say anything about that? Do you want to go first, Paul?
Oh, I don't know what the latest is with Little Casiobury. I know it's with it's back with Herts County Council, and there are attempts and plans to try and get this house restored. But there's a whole range of difficulties, obviously, with that. Particularly none more so than finding the money to do it, and actually finding the use for it as well. But again, I know there's work on behind the scenes, and I'm confident at some stage that it will. We did it with Frogmore. I'm sure we can manage it with Little Casiobury at some stage or other.
There are the friends of Little Casiobury that have got the CC, who are doing sort of work with that. It's owned by Hertfordshire County Council, and Watford did work very hard to try and see if we could do something with their sort of like collaboration. But yeah, I'd certainly head over. They're very active and doing things all the time, even in lockdown. So yeah, worth supporting them as well and finding out what they're up to.
And the Friends group is Alex McGregor Mason who leads that, and I know that they're looking at ways of securing funding. So do look online to find out more about that, Stephen. And then we had a question from Marion, and I'll find some over to you, Sarah. She was asking, she loved Frogmore House, and a question that I've been asked many times: can people visit it just to have a nosy around? You and I, Sarah, have had the pleasure of having a look inside.
Oh, yes. We're so lucky, and I got to see the work in progress because we were one of the partners working on the project down at the museum, and actually we've even got some of the old timbers that have been taken out of the house that are going to be used, because it's going to be in private use as offices. It's not a building that we can kind of all traipse through. However, we will be including it in Heritage Open Days and doing guided tours. We weren't able to do that last year due to safety restrictions, which was a real shame because we were hoping to do that, but we will be doing those when we're allowed to. So hopefully it'll be this September, and there are also plans for talks at the museum as well on the history by the architects and the project leaders, so people can find out lots more and actually get to see some of those timbers and things as well. So we're really grateful that there's going to be continued links there.
That's great. And Kim was saying that she used to work in the old free school, and I know a few people have asked me, what is it used for now? Sarah, do you know what goes on inside the old Free School?
Yeah, again, it's offices. It was an art centre for a while, but it's used. It's a private office space at the moment. Again, they have in the past done Heritage Open Days, but again, we can't force people because it's to do with the owners of the building and them feeling confident. But there are pictures of it. You can go on, and we'll be actually adding some more as a result of this talk and the interest. More pictures of our historic buildings in Watford, so including interiors. But yeah, we're hoping in the future that will be another one that we'll be able to get a tour of.
Brilliant. And Robert Locke asked a couple of questions, so we'll ask those now, and then we'll move on to your talk, Sarah. So, Kite's Place, fantastic house there. Paul mentioned it was used during the Second World War by the army, and Robert was just asking, what did the army use it for?
Oh, I have no idea. Probably secret stuff.
That's actually what Paul says is absolutely true. Quite often we don't always have the information till a lot later. I remember getting to go around Bentley Priory before it was open, when it was still Ministry of Defence. And now they make an incredible thing of that wonderful history. But up until about a decade ago, people locally just didn't know about it.
No.
So yeah, there would have been, quite often they were used for residential purposes and as sort of, for officers and things like that, but they were used for training, all manner. That's actually what happened with the Grove as well. They were lots of these places.
Secret stuff.
Secret stuff. And a final couple of questions. The moon under the water, amazed, Paul, that you've not been in it. But someone was asking, did it used to be called the Empress of Russia Tea Rooms? Is that correct?
Sarah, do you know that?
Yes, it did. So
there you
very
go.
Well done. Yeah. And I wouldn't have remembered that. So well done on someone on prompting us on that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things we love about this is please, afterwards get in contact with us, comment, leave.
I love little facts like that.
Website as well, and on our Facebook.
Little facts like that are just amazing. Yeah. It's like, did you know that the pelicans in St James's Park were originally donated by the Russian ambassador?
Oh, well, we're getting lots of really useful facts. So Karen Bell's just told us that the Seventh-day Adventist Church HQ on St Albans Road that was right at the end of your presentation, it was there before 2011, but was rebuilt following a fire that year.
Yeah, but it burnt down, yeah.
And then the last thing, Sarah, for you, the guided walking tours, which people loved, are they going to be coming back?
Oh, they absolutely will. We've really missed them. And we learn so much from doing this every time. People give us these amazing stories, like some of the buildings that Paul's been mentioning. People will tell us about how they skived off school, or and went and sat in the cinema at the back, or we find out where people first went on their dates. We've got the exciting news about what's been happening with the Colosseum and it getting all of that wonderful funding. The number of people who met at tea dances and sort of the wonderful stories. So that's what we love about those high street trails. Hoping again, what we're going to be doing is we'll be seeing how everything goes during the summer, because of course it's about keeping people safe. These have been really successful, so what we might be looking at doing is hopefully, and we hope you'd still like to be involved, Peter, is maybe do something a bit differently, where we do a monthly talk, or we do some other different activities of an evening, so whilst we're waiting to be able to get outside and do activities. But we're hoping we'll be able to take small groups on tours this summer.
Brilliant. Well, so I'm going to hand over to you now, because I think you've got a little presentation or quiz for us. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. So if Lewis will kindly bring up some slides. So another plug for the book. So we just thought we'd add a few extra. I mean, what Paul's been talking about has been amazing, and I'm always learning, and it's lovely to see the buildings in a fresh light. But what we've got here is just a few clues for some of our eagle-eyed viewers to see if people can recognise some of these local buildings in Watford. So if we could have our first one, you can see the Audentia on it, and you can see the coat of arms of Watford, and I think this is actually one of the finest coat of arms that you can find in the town. But where actually is this building? What building is it? There is a little bit of a clue in the two letters on either side.
I'm going to say I can see a C and an L.
Yep. So that might give people a clue, but I don't know if anyone's got any suggestions online.
So,
got a few people coming in. Stephen and Karen have said, is it the library?
It is, yeah. It's
Ah.
absolutely beautiful. So quite often people assume it's going to be the town hall because it's got the coat of arms. But this was built by the council, and you can see, as it says, I love it when buildings have the date on them. Built in 1928.
It's in the book.
Yes, absolutely. Don't doubt it. And that's actually the main entrance. But of course, usually we're looking sort of lower down. One of the clues in Watford is look up.
Look up. Always look up.
Yeah. Okay, and our next one. Now this is.
Oh, I think I know that one, Sarah.
No, I don't think any of the three of us have ever been in this building. So this is a building we all know from the outside, but not so many people get to come inside.
Isn't that Peter's office?
It is a fantastic staircase. I mean, it is a really impressive,
gorgeous.
And again, when we're able to reopen, we'll be starting back up doing tours of this building, which Peter very kindly leads on as well. So it's far more exciting to get a tour with a mayor than it is with a museum curator. But have we had anyone who's worked?
Karen's got 2 out of 2, so Karen Bell doing very well, telling us all it's the town hall. And there will be a change made here very soon, Sarah, because on the left we have on the wall engraved the Freeman of the Borough, and of course now with Luther Blissett being added to that, given that prestigious honour, that his name will be on the wall there.
That's amazing, isn't it? Along with my mum.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, and this, when we were talking about the Art Deco, you can just, I mean, this is an incredible example of lovely Art Deco style.
Lovely.
Right, okay.
I'm hoping to get my name on the plaque on a bandstand somewhere out and down the country, but you never know.
And our next slide. Now, this is actually very close to one of the buildings that Paul was talking about. So I'll tell you what the building is. This is actually an estate agent, which is just on the side of Monmouth House. Sort of, it's just added on to the end of the building. But does anyone know what this item is? So you can see a few of them. There's another one on Monmouth House, and there's also another one on the Escort Tavern in Escort Road. And if anyone finds any others, please do let us know, because we're always looking for them. Have we had anyone who's worked that one out?
No, Karen said it was Monmouth House.
Right.
At the bottom of the screen, is that what it's saying there? The
firemark.
Insurance.
Yeah. So it's actually, sorry, it doesn't show up on my screen here, but yes, it's actually a fire insurance mark in the days from when you weren't able to just call up the fire brigade. You'd actually have to have insurance on your house and they'd come out and visit you, but only if you were insured with the right company as well. So this one was a company with a sun emblem, and you can see the numbering on it. But, you know, if we go on to the next slide. Yeah, so we've got the museum, but I was going to say there's some others where it's handshakes and other ones as well. So, and then this one,
don't know where that one is.
That's incredible.
We know it as the museum, but who knows what this building used to be? And I'd love to see this decorated, Peter. Can we have that?
Can we have this when it reopens after lockdown, Sarah? I think this is the look you should go for, definitely.
I would love that. I think it would cost an absolute fortune nowadays that health and safety is a requirement and not just a couple of people up on a ladder. But who knows? It opened as a museum in 1981, but who knows what this amazing building was before that?
Okay, I'll see if we get any. Lots of people. Karen's doing very well today. Karen Bell's got her local history, so she's saying Benstigan's home and then offices.
That's absolutely right. So it was the family home for the Benskins family who brewed on this site. So they were brewers, and there were actually people that lived in this house before that. And then later on it was offices. And you can actually, if you look closely, you can see it does look quite different, including underneath that GR. So this was actually the coronation of King George VI. Underneath that, there's actually a porch that's gone now. So there is. Yeah, so there are a few changes and some different windows and things. But yeah, it's an incredible building and lovely to end on a big celebration. So yeah, that's exactly what I'd like it to look like when we can reopen in May.
And when when that photo was taken, then Sarah, it was used as a house at that stage, was it? Or was that offices?
It was offices by then.
Offices,
and what's so great is we still have lots of people who get in contact with us, including people that share photographs of when they worked there. You can tell who went to school around there because if you could smell the brewery when you were at school in the playground, you either went to the girls' grammar school or Watford Field Junior School. So it's those sorts of amazing little memories that just bring it all to life.
The Benskin name still exists, doesn't it? It's owned by Carlsberg, who are probably the best lager in the world.
Well, actually, and they don't brew, but there was a Benskins beer still being brewed for a while. But now one of the partners that we work with, Pope's Yard Brewery, they're actually going back to the original recipes. They've been doing lots of research and looking to recreate their own Benskins ale based on the original recipe.
That's brilliant.
Fabulous.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and thanks again, Paul. I think the reason that Karen Bell did so well, I can only presume that she must have a copy of your book, Paul. So,
well, I hope so. I did bump into Karen yesterday in Lee Farm Rec, and she was very chatty, but she didn't have the book with her, so she must have. But I'm more than happy to autograph it, Karen.
Yeah, if you can find a copy that's not autographed, they're the rare ones. But it's been really good to have you on, Paul, and thanks again, Sarah. We would love to get feedback on this. So obviously, the Watford Together initiative, we asked people what would they like, and several people suggested history talks, and so that's why we put these talks on. We've had thousands, I think, now of people watching the talks over the week. So do let us know how you found it, and if you've got any other suggestions. Our next Watford Together initiative is the One Town, One Book. So do find out more if you go to watfordtogether.co.uk, and there's lots of information on there about that. But thanks again, Paul, and thank you, Sarah. And we do look forward to being able to open the museum again in the weeks ahead as lockdown eases. So thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.